Hey everyone, welcome back to Han's Story, where we dive into the most mysterious, emotional, and mind-twisting fictional stories inspired by real-life what-ifs. This is a work of fiction. All names, characters, and places are entirely imaginary. Any resemblance to actual events or persons is purely coincidental. In today's episode, we begin a chilling new mystery: the sand kept their secrets. A young engineer vanished without a trace in 2009. But 15 years later, the wind unearthed more than just sand. If you love stories about long-lost secrets, vanishing people, and unexpected twists, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapters of this gripping tale. If you hear this, I'm not alone. They're not supposed to be here. Excerpt from the final radio transmission of Evan Harlow, August 17, 2009. The silver Land Rover rumbled steadily across the blazing West Texas desert, leaving a long trail of fine red dust swirling in the heat. Evan Harlow, a 30-year-old geological engineer, sat behind the wheel, squinting through the blinding sunlight. In the passenger seat, his old military-grade PRC-77 radio crackled with static, then fell completely silent. He pulled over next to a large outcrop of stone, exactly at the coordinates marked in his field folder. Site M12, he muttered, glancing down. The spot had been flagged by Aegis Group, the mining firm he worked for, but oddly, no official surveys had ever been completed. The original records dated back to the 1970s, full of missing details and unexplained gaps. As he stepped out of the vehicle, a strange unease swept over him. It wasn't the heat or the desolation. It was the silence. No wind, no birds, not even the usual whisper of shifting sand. The desert, normally alive with ambient hums and distant creaks, had turned absolutely still. Evan pulled a seismic sensor from his pack and flipped open his field notebook pages, browned by years of sun and grit. The original notes, faint pencil scrawls from engineer William Rogan, filled the margins. Rogan had left the company suddenly after a 1982 expedition. Officially, it was for health reasons, but Evan had always been skeptical of tidy excuses. The seismic unit beeped softly. Evan kneeled, brushing away sand, and saw it. A small depression, circular, maybe 3 feet across. It looked unnatural, too smooth, too clean. And poking out from the base of the hollow was a charred fragment of metal, half-buried, scorched black at the edges. He reached for the radio. "Base, this is Harlow. I've reached M12. I'm seeing a foreign object, metallic burned, requesting instructions." A brief crackle then. "Copy that, Harlow. Hold position. Do not disturb the object. We'll respond in 10. But 10 minutes passed, then 20. No reply. Evan tried the emergency frequency. The radio flared, then hissed with a distorted, garbled voice. Not English, not static. It was something mimicking speech, almost like a recording but twisted, warped. Then silence. He looked up. Someone had been here. Footprints, not his, fresh. He flicked on his personal recorder. "Whoever hears this, I'm not alone. The radio's jammed. There are footprints around the site. Someone or something was watching me. I'll keep recording." That was the last message ever recovered from Evan Harlow. 15 years later, July 2024, at the University of Texas, a student-led archaeological survey under Professor Lindell was using ground-penetrating radar GPR and drone LiDAR scanning to study topographic shifts in old, uncharted sections of West Texas desert. Senior student Isla Garrett sat in the research trailer sipping warm coffee, eyes fixed on the blurry GPR output on her screen. Something caught her attention, a box-like structure buried about 4 feet below the sand. Perfect edges, sharp corners. "Professor," she called, "we've got a solid anomaly here. Man-made." The room quieted. It was near the same coordinates Evan Harlow had last reported from in 2009. The Texas sun hung like a molten coin over the horizon as Isla Garrett stood next to the flagged site, her boots sinking slightly into the warm sand. Behind her, the University of Texas field team bustled with excitement cables, unwinding drones, charging data screens flickering under the tarp-covered station. 4 feet down right under here, Isla repeated, pointing to the spot where the GPR had pinged. It's a rectangular void. It's not natural. Could be a crate, a container, maybe even a buried structure. Professor Lindahl knelt beside her, brushing his salt and pepper hair back from his forehead. Any sign of erosion around it? None visible on the surface, Isla said. It's like someone buried it and smoothed the area perfectly. The LiDAR scan shows uniform texture around the site. Too perfect. That's what chilled her. Nature was rarely perfect out here. By late morning, the excavation team had formed a narrow trench, careful not to disturb anything more than necessary. The sand grew darker as they went deeper, denser, like it hadn't shifted in years. Then Isla's trowel scraped against something solid. Thunk. Stop digging, she said. Everyone froze. She cleared more sand by hand and revealed a metal edge corroded but intact. A shallow iron box, roughly 2 feet wide, maybe 18 inches tall. The lid was sealed but cracked at the corner where time and moisture had eaten through the weld. Professor Lindahl hovered over her shoulder, breath held. You're certain no one's touched this since? Radar data said it was undisturbed, Isla said. I think we just found something untouched for 15 years. Using latex gloves, Isla gently opened the box. A wave of musty air rolled out hot stale and carrying a faint metallic tinge. Inside were 4 items. A battered leather-bound journal pages warped with moisture. A silver bracelet tarnished and thin engraved with the name Emily V. A rolled-up piece of yellowed paper, possibly a field map. And nestled deep in the corner, a scorched old-school cassette tape. Oh my God, one of the students whispered. Professor Lindahl carefully lifted the bracelet. Emily V., he read aloud. Who's Emily? Wait. Isla's eyes widened. I've read about her. Emily Vargas. She was Evan Harlow's girlfriend-fiancé, actually. She vanished in 2007, 2 years before Evan disappeared. The desert went very still again. This doesn't make sense, Lindahl murmured. If she vanished 2 years before Evan, why is her bracelet buried with his possible journal? Isla picked up the notebook carefully. The cover was cracked, but the ink inside had mostly held. On the first page, written in clean, blocky handwriting, was a simple entry. If you find this, it means someone finally started asking the right questions. Don't trust the company. Don't trust the agency. Follow the map. And below it, a single date, August 17th, 2009. By that afternoon, the entire dig site had been cordoned off with official university tape. News of the find hadn't reached outside the camp yet, but Isla knew that wouldn't last. That evening, she sat in the camp's trailer, carefully unspooling the cassette tape inside a field recorder. The audio was degraded, hissing, and warped, but the voice on the tape was clear enough to send shivers down her spine. It was a man, calm, steady, but there was fear underneath his words. This is Evan Harlow. Time is 11:42 a.m., August 17th. I've been here for 40 minutes. My coordinates match Site M12, but what I've found, it's not in the records. There's something buried here. Not mineral, not man-made, at least not by anything I've studied. The surface burns differently. The magnetometer jumps every time I get near it. And something else. There are footprints. Someone else is out here. I don't know who. Pause. I don't think I'm supposed to find this. I don't think I'm supposed to be alive after I do. Then static. And then faintly, as if the recorder was being handled by someone else. He already saw it. Just bury him with it. Click. Silence. Isla stared at the recorder. Her hands were clammy. Professor, she whispered, you need to hear this. The next morning, the dean of the university called in. The dig was to be suspended immediately. The site was now under federal jurisdiction. 2 black SUVs showed up by noon unmarked. 4 men in suits. No badges. No names. They took the box. Took the tape. Took the map. But not the journal. Isla had hidden it under her mattress the night before. That evening, as the sun dipped below the mesa ridge, Isla read through more pages by flashlight. The later entries changed in tone, more paranoid, more frantic. I saw lights last night, in the distance. They flickered in a pattern too uniform to be natural. I tried to record them, but my camera shut down the moment I pointed it toward the glow. The battery had 92%. That's impossible. I heard a voice. It said my name, but there was no one there. If they find this journal, they'll erase it. Erase me, just like they erased Rogan, just like they erased Emily. Isla flipped to the last page. There, in large, scratched letters, possibly written with a piece of metal or stone, were the words, Otis 9, M12 is just the beginning. That night, Isla couldn't sleep. Something had been unearthed that wasn't meant to be found. The government wanted it back in the ground, but now she had a piece of it. And for the first time, she wasn't sure she was alone anymore. By Monday, the dig site was gone. Not covered, erased. The trench had been filled in, smoothed over by machinery, then raked by hand to remove all track marks. Even the GPR grid stakes had been replaced by identical-looking scrub brush, planted to mimic natural growth. If Isla hadn't been there to dig it herself, she would have thought it had never existed. But she had the journal. And more than that, she had questions. Back at the university lab, Isla locked the journal in her personal locker and slipped quietly into the restricted archives section after hours. She had access, barely. Professor Lindell had vouched for her at the start of the semester, and her badge still scanned green. She didn't search Otis 9 right away. She started broader. Otis plus Texas plus M12. Desert Sector's project names beginning with O discontinued testing zones. Hours passed. The only thing she could confirm was that there was no official mention of anything called Otis 9. Not in geology databases, not in government mineral rights, not in defense contractor logs. Nothing. And that meant one of two things: either it never existed or it was scrubbed so thoroughly it might as well have been. But then she changed tactics. Rather than searching online, she dove into physical records, old military topography maps kept in the oversized drawer cabinets in the back of the lab. Half of them hadn't been touched in decades. She sifted through dozens of crinkled sheets until one finally made her freeze. A survey map of West Texas from 1983, commissioned by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Marked in faint pencil just west of Site M12 was a circle. Inside the circle, OT9. A faint red stamp crossed the top right of the sheet, cancelled. 1984, restricted zone, no further entry. It wasn't Otis 9, but OT9, and that was no coincidence. By Tuesday morning, Isla found herself pacing in Professor Lindell's office, the OT9 map folded under her arm, the journal clutched tightly in her hand. Lindell listened silently as she laid everything out: the bracelet, the tape, the journal entries, the federal agents, the erased dig site. When she was done, he leaned back slowly in his creaky desk chair. "I believe you," he said. Isla blinked. "You do?" He nodded. "And that's the problem." He opened a drawer and pulled out an old binder. From it, he retrieved a single-page report labeled Incident Summary, OT9 Sector, September 2nd, 1983. It had only one paragraph and most of it was blacked out. But what remained read, abnormal radiation pulses recorded following subsurface breach. All civilian staff evacuated. Sector decommissioned. Per directive, all logs destroyed. Term Otis to be removed from all internal communications moving forward. Professor Lindell said I came across that years ago and assumed it was a clerical error. Otis was the name of a supervisor at the time, Otis Barlow. Retired in 1985, disappeared in 1986. Never reported missing. No obituary. Otis Barlow, Isla whispered. "So he's real," was Lindell said. I tried asking about him once at a symposium. One of the speakers pulled me aside and told me in no uncertain terms to never mention that name again. "Do you know where he worked?" Lindell opened his laptop and pulled up a classified registry, the kind professors were only allowed to view in academic research contexts. He typed Barlow Otis, and a single result popped up. Project Orion, Field Ops Coordinator, 1974-1984, location restricted, personnel clearance, red tier. Below that, a photo. Grainy, cold-eyed. A man in his late 50s, crew cut, wearing a desert camouflage uniform. But what chilled Isla was the name of the site beneath his credentials. Facility 9, Otis Station. That night, Isla sat on her apartment floor, cross-legged, surrounded by papers, maps, the scanned journal, and scribbled notes. She'd skipped her lectures, skipped meals. The tape still haunted her thoughts. Just bury him with it. Who had said that another voice? Someone on his team. She reopened the journal and flipped to a mid-entry written in rushed, slanted handwriting. They were watching me again. But they're not government. They wear black. No markings. Their vehicles have no plates. They have no names. Just code patches. One of them said Station 9, and the other called him Otis, but Otis has been dead for 20 years, or should be. She sat back, rubbing her temples. Otis wasn't just a man. Otis had become a code name, a phantom. A ghost embedded in redacted government history. At 2:14 a.m., Isla's phone lit up with a text. Unknown number. No name. We saw what you took. Return the journal, now. Her heart stopped. Another message arrived seconds later. Don't be Evan. She stood so fast she knocked over her coffee. The room blurred. She turned off the lights, peered through her blinds. Nothing. No car, no movement. She opened her drawer and retrieved the small taser she kept from her campus safety kit. It felt inadequate. For the first time, she considered giving up turning over the journal, letting the mystery stay buried. But then she turned to the last page again. Evan's message. Otis 9, M12 is just the beginning, and beneath it written in shaky pen, if anyone reads this, find the warehouse in Harlow County, the one without a number. That's where they took her. Her, Emily Vargas. She wasn't just a name on a bracelet. She was part of this, and she may never have left the desert. The roads through Harlow County stretched wide and cracked beneath the scorching Texas sun, flanked by fields of pale dust and abandoned gas stations. Isla drove with her windows up a printed satellite map, resting in the passenger seat, a red circle drawn around a patch of land just outside city limits, a place with no official address and no building number. It wasn't listed on Google Maps, it didn't show up in property records, but Evan's journal said it existed, the warehouse without a number. That's where they took her. When she arrived, the GPS spun blankly. No roads, no landmarks, just a wide fenced compound surrounded by dirt. And at the center of it, not a warehouse, but a squat single-story cinder block building roof, rusted windows blacked out. There were no markings, no signs, no cameras she could see. And yet, she felt watched the moment she stepped out of her car. The gate had rusted off its hinges. She walked in. No alarms, no barking dogs, just the wind and the distant squeal of some loose metal grinding against its bolts. Inside, it smelled of old oil and mildew. The floor was concrete cracked in the corners. Filing cabinets lined one wall, mostly empty or rusted shut. In the center of the room sat a chair, and in the chair sat a man, elderly, silent, hands folded in his lap, staring straight ahead at nothing. He didn't look at her when she stepped closer. Sir Isla said cautiously. No response. Then she tried something bolder. Do you know someone named Otis Barlow? That did it. The man's lips twitched. His head turned slowly, and he smiled. You don't say that name in here, he said hoarsely. Walls remember. Who are you? Isla asked. Do you work here? I used to, he said. When it was still called what it was. Before they buried the name under lies. What name? Station 9, he said. The first Otis site. Her heart thudded. Do you remember Evan Harlow? She asked. Now he looked her straight in the eye. He asked questions, too. Kind questions. Didn't deserve what happened. What did happen? The man tilted his head. They buried him. I know that, but why? He looked toward the far wall where rust streaked down the concrete like dried blood. Because Evan found out what Otis was never supposed to know. It wasn't a mining operation. Never was. It was containment. And she wasn't supposed to leave. Who? Isla whispered. The man slowly reached into his coat. Isla tensed. But all he pulled out was a folded photo, creased, water-damaged. He handed it to her with shaky hands. In the photo was a young woman smiling. Short black hair, warm eyes, wearing a University of Texas sweatshirt. I don't understand, Isla said. That's her, he said. She was never supposed to leave the compound, but Evan helped her. You mean Emily, Isla said. The man blinked. She called herself that, yes, but she had another name. Before. He turned, suddenly coughing violently into his sleeve. When he looked up again, his eyes were watery distant. I'm not supposed to talk. They took my name, when I left the project. They took everything. Social Security driver's license files like I never existed. What is Otis 9? She asked, voice shaking. Tell me the truth. He leaned forward, and in a voice barely above a whisper he said, Otis 9 wasn't a place. It was her file name. Isla stared. What? Project Otis 9. Object terrestrial inhuman signature. Number 9 in containment sequence. She looked like us. Moved like us. But she wasn't born here. She wasn't even made here. Isla's throat tightened. You're saying Emily wasn't... She escaped, he said. And Evan helped her. Or thought he did. But she didn't run. She hid. Right here, in this town. For a while. Where is she now? I don't know, the man said. I never saw her again after 2009. But the people who buried her, they're still watching. Still listening. He paused. Then he stood up, creaking bones, heavy breath, and handed her a key. What is this? Storage unit. Out on the edge of county line. It's where Evan stashed everything he couldn't carry. If you want answers, that's where they'll be. But if you go there... He stopped, looked her dead in the eye. Don't take your phone. Isla drove away just after dusk, the key burning cold in her hand. She checked her phone's signal. No service. She opened her Maps app. Still nothing. And yet, a new text appeared on her screen. No name, just, we warned you. And below it, a photo. Her inside the compound, taken from behind. Someone had been in the room with her, and she'd never heard a thing. The storage unit sat where the old man said it would on the outskirts of Harlow County, behind a rundown gas station with a rusted-out Pepsi sign and a broken soda machine that still blinked cold drinks, even though it hadn't worked in years. It was Unit 43B. No paperwork, no rental records, just a heavy iron door behind a concrete wall, its number scratched off but still visible under the sun-faded paint. Isla didn't bring her phone. She left it powered off, battery removed in the glove box of her car half a mile down the road. The key fit the lock perfectly. Click. The metal groaned as she pulled the door open. Inside, the air was thick, dry, hot, and stale, like paper left too long in the sun. Dust floated in pale shafts of moonlight cutting through vents above. Everything was still. The unit wasn't filled with junk like she expected. No boxes, no old furniture, no piles of garbage. Just one metal cabinet bolted to the concrete floor, and next to it, a chair, folded, undisturbed. As if someone had once come here often to sit and stare at that cabinet. She stepped in heart-pounding. The cabinet had 5 drawers, each labeled in faded black marker. 1 logs, 2 recordings, 3 maps, 4 samples, 5 clearance read, eyes only. That last one was sealed with an additional padlock. Isla took a breath and started with drawer 1. Drawer 1. Logs inside were dozens of typed pages, some on official Aegis Group letterhead, others on unmarked yellow paper. She read through the first few. 8 to 12:09, 2:00 p.m. Initial scan showed fluctuating EM signatures not native to local geology. Touched surface of object. Metallic but warm to the touch. Not possible. Log temperatures 14 degrees higher than ambient environment. 8:14:09, 11:22 p.m. She came back last night. She asked me not to tell anyone she's here. She says they'll kill her if I do. I believe her. Isla's hand trembled. She came back, Emily, or whatever her real name was. The logs continued becoming more frantic. Evan had clearly been documenting every moment, every odd shift in energy readings, every time she appeared, sometimes speaking, sometimes just watching from a distance. In one entry he wrote, "She's learning how to be normal, to speak, to breathe slower, to be human, but sometimes her eyes glow like she forgets to hide. And then I remember she's not pretending to be one of us. She's choosing to." Drawer 2. Recordings. A handful of old cassette tapes lay stacked inside, each labeled in Sharpie. Audio, first contact. EV Conversation 3. Radio. Interference pattern. 7. Surveillance. 8:15 feed. Red tape. Do not play. She picked up first contact and slid it into a handheld player tucked in the corner of the drawer. The voice that came through was unmistakably Evan's. She appeared near the ridge at 0324. No shoes, clothes wet from the rain. She didn't speak at first, just watched. When I asked who she was, she said, "I don't remember that part of me yet." He paused. When I asked what her name was, she said, "You can call me Emily, he used to." There was silence. Then something else barely audible. A voice, not Evan's. Soft, unnatural. "You remember what it felt like to not be afraid." Isla stopped the tape. She wasn't ready for that voice again. Drawer 3 maps, dozens of them. Some topographic, others infrared, a few labeled Infra-X with odd heat blooms that didn't match desert temperature patterns. One map had coordinates circled in red deep in the restricted sector southwest of M12. A handwritten note attached read, "The facility wasn't just underground, it was under something older, something they didn't build." Drawer 4 samples, vials of dust. Sand. Thin, metallic slivers sealed in vacuum bags. One of them glowed faintly under the unit's flickering light. Blue. Cold. Artificial. On a sticky note stuck to the inside lid of the drawer, Evan had written, "Nothing in our elemental table matches this. Not Earth-based." She slammed the drawer shut. Suddenly the metal beneath her feet groaned. She froze. A low hum was building somewhere outside. No engines, no tires, just vibration, like the ground was being pulled taut, wire-thin. She turned to the final drawer. Drawer 5, clearance red, eyes only. Still locked. She crouched and examined the padlock. Old, mechanical, but strong. Then she saw it taped to the bottom edge of drawer 4. A small key wrapped in cloth. She snatched it, fitted it into the padlock, and turned. Click! The drawer slid open. And inside, not papers, not tapes, but a single photograph. Evan standing in the desert squinting at the sun. Next to him, a girl. Dark eyes, pale skin, no shoes, hands folded neatly. Behind them, a black shape, jagged, towering, casting a shadow where there was no light. On the back of the photo, Evan had written, "If you're seeing this, you know they lied. She's not what they said. And what's buried under the desert didn't come from above. It came from below." Isla stuffed the tapes and photos into her bag and bolted out of the unit, slamming the door shut behind her. The hum had stopped, but there in the dirt beside her car's tire was a fresh footprint. Not hers, and next to it, scratched into the dust. "You're too late." Isla didn't remember the drive home, not in full. Her hands shook the entire way, her eyes flicking between the road and the rearview mirror, expecting to see headlights. But there were none. No black SUVs, no helicopters. Not this time. Still, her instincts screamed. She pulled into her apartment complex near midnight. The street was quiet, too quiet for a Friday night. No music, no neighbors on their balconies, just the low whine of cicadas and the distant thud of a passing train. She reached the second floor and paused outside her door. Her keys were already in hand when she noticed it. The lock was scratched, not broken, not forced, but manipulated. She slowly slid the key in, turned it, and pushed the door open. Darkness. She didn't move, didn't breathe. Faint light from the hallway poured in behind her, cutting a sliver across her tiny living room. Nothing looked obviously out of place. No smashed furniture, no drawers open. She reached to her left and flipped the wall switch. Nothing. The light didn't turn on. Power's out, she thought. But the hallway light still worked. The street lamps were on. Only her unit was dead. She backed away, retreating down the stairs, pulled out her phone, turned off since the storage unit, and powered it up. The screen flashed, loaded. No missed calls, no new texts. Then the signal dropped. A single bar appeared, then disappeared again. She stood in the stairwell, debating. Call someone who would believe her, the cops. "Yes, officer. Someone broke into my apartment, but they didn't steal anything. They just might have left proof of an alien life form underground." No one would believe that. Instead, she walked back up, heart pounding, and entered her apartment again. This time, she left the door open, used her phone's flashlight. Step by step, she scanned the kitchen. Nothing. She moved to the hallway. Her bedroom door was ajar. Inside, the drawers were untouched. Her backpack with the journal and tapes was still zipped. She checked the side pockets untouched. The photos, maps, samples, all still there. Then she saw it. Something on her pillow. She stepped closer, every muscle in her neck locking tight. It was a stone. Small, obsidian black, perfectly smooth. No dust, no markings. It sat in the center of her pillow like it had been placed there with careful precision. She picked it up. It was warm. And etched on the underside in microscopic jagged scratches were 2 words. She's close. Isla sat down. She didn't know how long she sat there. Could have been an hour. Could have been 5 minutes. Eventually, she opened Evan's journal again. She flipped to a blank page and started writing. 9:14, 24, 12, 17 a.m. They've been inside. They didn't take anything. They left. This stone. I think it's the same material from drawer 4, the non-Earth sample, but shaped. That means someone or something is still making them. And they want me to know. Emily is still alive. The next day, she drove to campus with the stone in a sealed container and visited Dr. Lin, a materials science professor, with clearance to analyze high-frequency mineral samples. He examined it under a scanning electron microscope. His first words, "This isn't from here." He ran thermal tests, density checks, electromagnetic resonance. None of the data matched any known Earth-based compound, not even close. Then finally he pulled back from the microscope, eyes wide. "Isla," he said quietly, "this thing isn't just a rock, it's a storage device." "What?" "There are patterns, repeating structures. They're too clean to be geological. It's not writing exactly, more like encoded information, like a primitive hard drive except organic. But the weird thing is," he paused, "it's responding to the environment." "Responding how?" He turned the display to show the micrograph. Tiny crystalline lines were pulsing, slow, faint, like a heartbeat. "It's alive," he said, half joking, but he didn't laugh. "I think it's transmitting something." Isla swallowed hard. "Can you trace it?" "Give me 24 hours. That night she returned home to find a postcard in her mailbox. No name, no return address. On the front, a photo of a desert sunrise. On the back, a handwritten message. "She remembers you. She remembers him too. You're not just the observer anymore, Isla. You're part of the pattern now." And beneath that, a set of coordinates, deep inside the M12 restricted zone, same area circled on Evan's hand-drawn map. And in the corner of the postcard, barely visible, a tiny imprint of the stone's crystalline structure. The pattern was spreading. The desert was different now. Not just quiet, but aware. As Isla followed the rough path toward the M12 restricted zone, guided by the GPS coordinates etched on the back of the anonymous postcard, she couldn't shake the feeling that the sand beneath her boots was watching, listening, waiting. She'd left her car miles behind and was hiking on foot with only a canvas backpack, Evan's handwritten map, a printed satellite overlay, and the black stone stored inside a lead-lined case borrowed from the university's geology lab. The closer she got, the worse the static in her handheld radio became. Not random, not atmospheric. It had rhythm. 3 short bursts, 1 long, 3 more short, then silence. It repeated every 2 minutes like a beacon. She scribbled it down on her map, and when she got close enough, she realized the pulses matched the frequency pattern Evan logged in his final tape. The pattern wasn't just noise, it was location-based, a signal trying to pull her closer. By early afternoon, she reached the coordinates. There was no marker, no visible structure, just a wide expanse of flat sand ringed by low rock outcroppings. But Evan had drawn something there. A rough oval shaded in, labeled only with 1 word, shell. She unfolded her survey equipment, a portable ground-penetrating radar tablet, and ran a sweep. Within minutes, the display lit up with something impossible. A perfect sphere 60 feet in diameter buried just 10 feet below the surface. That wasn't human design. No foundation, no right angles, no supports. Just a shell. She spent the next 2 hours digging by hand, then with collapsible tools. The sand was stubborn, heavy, like it resisted movement. But eventually her trowel scraped metal. No, not metal. It was smooth like obsidian, but rang like titanium when struck. She cleared enough to see a curved part of a massive dome embedded in the earth. The surface shimmered slightly. Not from light, but from temperature variance. When she placed her palm against it, it felt cool, then warm, then vibrated faintly, matching the same pulse as the radio signal. She stepped back, pulled out the black stone, set it on the shell. Instantly the vibration stopped, the static in her radio cleared, the wind dropped. And then, the ground beneath her shook. Just a tremor, subtle, controlled. A line appeared in the shell's surface. Then another crossing it, forming a perfect oval hatch. It began to open. The opening didn't reveal darkness, not immediately. Instead, soft blue light spilled out mist, rising with it. Isla covered her mouth as an odd scent filled the air. Not decay, not dust, but something sterile, like ozone, like electricity. Inside was a tunnel, low, sloped, covered in the same black material. Isla hesitated for a full minute before stepping in. Her breath echoed slightly. The air was cooler, but not dry. Somewhere in the distance, machines hummed very faint, very old. Then just 10 feet in the tunnel opened into a chamber. Perfectly spherical, lined with rings of symbols, not letters, not numbers, but fractals. Patterns that repeated themselves inward like mirrors looking into mirrors. And at the center of the chamber, a chair. Not built, grown. It curved up from the floor, made of the same black stone, but almost fluid, like it had formed itself around whoever had once sat in it. There was something resting in the chair. Isla stepped closer. It wasn't a person. It was a suit. Tall, inhumanly slender, no seams, no zippers, no clasps. But it was empty. And in its lap, resting like a gift, was a photo, worn, torn at the corners. Evan and Emily, standing by the ridge, smiling. And behind them in the distance, this very chamber half buried, the hatch still closed. On the back of the photo, scrawled in shaky, familiar handwriting. She found it before I did, and now it answers only to her. If you made it here, Isla, she's ready for you. She says, thank you for coming. A sudden tone echoed through the chamber, low, harmonious. The wall behind the chair pulsed with light and opened. Another tunnel. This one sloped downward. And at the end, Isla could see a shape. A person. Slim, pale, long black hair falling to one side, standing very still just out of the light. And then softly, not spoken, but inside Isla's mind, a voice. You kept the pattern alive. Isla's knees nearly gave out. She stepped closer. The figure didn't move, but the light around her shifted, bending as if repelled by her shape. It was Emily. Or what had once been Emily. She looked human. Almost. But her eyes, they weren't eyes. Not anymore. They were lenses layered like an insect's, shimmering with every frequency of light and memory and sound. And her mouth moved, but her voice came from everywhere. Evan gave me a name. You gave me a path. Now I can show you why they buried me. The lights dimmed. The shell closed behind her. And the desert swallowed them both. The tunnel lit itself as Isla followed Emily deeper into the chamber's lower levels, but there were no visible lights. The walls themselves pulsed with dim, soft radiance, shifting from blue to violet to white, like a heartbeat trying to stay calm. Emily, if she could still be called that, moved like mist. Her feet barely touched the ground, her form subtly blurring at the edges with each step. Her hair floated in a non-existent breeze, and her presence carried gravity, like standing next to a magnetic field you couldn't measure but felt pulling at your teeth. Where are we going? Isla asked. To the place where memory doesn't belong to one mind. Her voice was in Isla's head again, not echoing in the tunnel, not formed by a mouth. It carried weight, not sound, meaning. You want the truth. He did too, but he wasn't ready to see it. He thought he was saving me. He didn't realize he was part of me. They entered a circular chamber smaller than the first. The floor was a mirrored surface, not just reflective, but responsive. When Isla stepped on it, the surface rippled under her feet like water made of light. Emily gestured with one hand. The chamber pulsed once, and the room changed. Suddenly, Isla was not underground anymore. She stood on a vast, open desert plain, but the sky was deep violet. Twin suns floated low over the horizon. Monoliths of black and silver pierced the clouds like fingers, and shapes moved in the sky, not birds, not machines, living architecture that breathed and hovered with ancient purpose. She gasped. What is this? Memory, not mine, not yours, the planet's. Your kind calls it Earth, but it had a name long before, a name not spoken with mouths. Images flooded Isla's vision, not in sequence but layered. A continent rising from the sea fully formed, carried on plates of light. Creatures that looked like humans but had no bones, just flexible crystalline structures. Tunnels beneath the crust lined with fractal markings that matched Evan's journal sketches exactly. A sphere falling from the sky, dark, irregular, not meteor, but a seed. Emily turned to her. They planted it here, long before your kind, long before memory was linear. They didn't come to conquer. They came to hide something, something they were afraid of. Me. The images shifted again. Isla saw Emily, but not as a woman, not even a body. She saw her as a pulse, a signal moving between patterns drawn to neural frequency, born inside something biological, but not bound by it. She'd once been an idea, a protective code, a guardian virus, designed to monitor whatever was buried deep beneath Earth's mantle. But then, something woke up, something wrong. The memory now burned with fire. Cities vanished in seconds, sound stopped, entire ecosystems froze, reversed, or looped in time. The ones who built the sphere knew it wasn't a prison, it was a bandage. The infection would always try to leak through. That's why I was made. To feel it coming, to warn them. But they left, and I stayed. Suddenly Isla stood in the chamber again. Emily faced her now, still more human. I don't understand, Isla whispered. Why are you showing me this? Emily tilted her head. Because Evan showed me trust. And now you've shown me memory. She stepped closer. They'll come for you soon. Not the men in black, not the government, not Project Otis. The real ones. The ones who want the pattern broken. They remember you now, because you remembered me. Isla's voice cracked. What do they want? Emily looked upward. The walls of the chamber began to vibrate not from sound, but data. The light dimmed, the pattern intensified. Then a message burned into the floor below Isla's feet. Not English, not any written language, just geometry. And yet Isla understood it. The warning was never for humans. It was for whatever is waking up beneath them. Emily reached out and placed her hand over Isla's chest. If I fail again, the pattern dies with me. But if you remember, her hand pulsed. It becomes you. And with that, Isla felt a rush, like every memory, every signal, every buried frequency on the planet slammed into her skull and dissolved into stars. She collapsed. Darkness swallowed the chamber. When Isla awoke, she was alone. Back at the edge of the desert, her car untouched, the shell gone. In her hand, she clutched something small, hot, pulsing. It was the black stone, but now etched into its surface, no longer in scratches, but glowing perfect light. The pattern lives. Isla hadn't spoken to anyone in 3 days. Not since she woke at the edge of the desert, the soft red sand still clinging to her hands, the faint glow of the black stone warming her palm like a second pulse. She remembered the tunnel, the chair, the sphere, Emily. But when she looked back, it was gone. No entrance, no markings, no energy signature, just endless sand, like the desert had closed itself again. But not before giving her a message. 4 words etched into the surface of the stone. The pattern lives. She kept the stone hidden in a copper-lined lockbox beneath her bed, but the energy still leaked. Her watch lost time. The microwave clock blinked constantly. Her phone couldn't hold a signal longer than 10 seconds at a time. The stone pulsed once every 23 seconds, she counted. Then one night it changed 23, 22, 21. It was accelerating. Back in her apartment, Isla spent hours cross-referencing Evan's final notes, the decrypted Otis 9 logs, and the map of seismic patterns she had overlaid on the world. What she saw chilled her. The pattern. The frequency that had once been isolated only to the M12 zone was now mirrored across the globe, Iceland, the Gobi Desert, Antarctica, and beneath the Pacific. Wherever there had once been impact, craters, volcanic scars, or deep mantle anomalies, the signal echoed, like the Earth was activating something beneath itself, or remembering. She had one option left: the red tape, the one recording Evan had labeled "Do Not Play." Her hands shook as she slotted it into the digital deck and pressed play. "If you're hearing this, it means I failed. She warned me not to return to the lower chamber, said the mirror wasn't ready, but I had to know. I had to see what was beneath it. It's not a ship. It's not a tomb. It's a mirror. It reflects not just what we are, but what we fear. It copies. It remembers. And now..." A long pause. "It's evolving." Another voice entered, not Emily, not Evan. Something that didn't understand tone or shape. A voice that had been learned, built from watching. "You showed me pain. I saved it. You showed me trust. I grew it. You showed me death. I learned to live." Then silence. The tape ended. Isla stared at the deck, the black stone still glowing faintly beside her on the table. In that moment, she understood something Evan hadn't. It wasn't Emily who was changing. It was the pattern itself, and now it had access to human emotion. That made it unpredictable and dangerous. 3 days later, Isla uploaded everything. Not to a blog, not to a journalist, not even to the university. She dumped every encrypted file map, voice log, journal scan, and video feed into a dark web dead drop server used by international whistleblowers. The folder was titled only Echozine. Inside it, one final document handwritten. Emily wasn't the project. She was the buffer. What they locked away wasn't her. It was something she held back, something older than stars. Something learning from us. If you find this, you're already part of it. The pattern lives. And now, it remembers you. Within 72 hours, the drop had been downloaded over 36,000 times. Encrypted forums exploded with threads connecting ancient myths, underground frequencies, and satellite irregularities. People decoded fragments of Evan's journal. Others analyzed the spectrogram of the black stone's pulses. Then after 5 days, the archive was gone. Not corrupted. Wiped. Servers disconnected. IP logs erased. Even users who had downloaded it found their drives malfunctioning. Files bricked, accounts locked. Only one thing remained. A screenshot of a message from an anonymous handle. The signal is no longer singular. We intercepted matching pulses in South Australia and the Arctic shelf. Emily wasn't the only one. Isla hasn't been seen publicly since, but fragments of her voice have surfaced on pirate radio stations, chopped repeated phrases, fractal speech. Sometimes scrambled, sometimes not. The mirror is awake. It doesn't want control. It wants connection. And it's learning faster than we are. Some say she's been taken. Others say she became the second echo. But those who still monitor frequencies late at night believe she's still transmitting, still resisting, still warning. And somewhere in the sand, under stars that seem to flicker just slightly wrong, the black stone pulses in rhythm with the Earth's breath. The pattern lives, but not alone anymore. 3 months later, Reykjavik, Iceland. His name was Kyle Anders, graduate student, signal processing, specializing in low-frequency wave anomaly detection. On the surface, he looked like every other PhD candidate, scruffy quiet, buried in headphones and open MATLAB windows. But Kale had a secret: he was listening for ghosts. Not the kind in haunted houses. The kind that lived in data. For 2 years, Kale had been pulling anomalous ULF ultra-low frequency signals out of Icelandic tectonic drift data. Usually it was just background noise, earthquakes, volcanic rumbles, sea ice collisions. But in early October, he saw something that shouldn't have been there. A pattern. Repetitive, symmetrical, too clean for tectonic motion, too organic for machinery. He ran it through filters. It repeated every 5 minutes exactly. Then it changed. After each day, the waveform mutated slightly, growing in complexity. And when Kyle mapped the frequency visually, the result wasn't a waveform. It was a shape, a spiral, interlocking, fractal. He stared at it, stunned. It matched something he'd seen before on a message board that had vanished weeks ago. Something called Echo 01. He'd archived it out of curiosity. The archive was corrupted, now bricked like everyone else's. But the image stuck with him. A stone, black, smooth, etched with light. And beneath it the words, "The pattern lives." Kale didn't know who Isla was, but he knew what signal inheritance looked like. And this signal, the one he'd found in the fault line near Thingvellir National Park, wasn't from the Earth's core. It was being generated, artificially, or worse, organically. That night, Kyle brought his equipment to the park. Just past midnight, he reached a narrow ravine between tectonic plates. No one else around. Wind cut hard across the plain. He set up his antenna, ran a live spectro feed, adjusted the bandwidth, and waited. 3 minutes in the receiver pinged. 3 short pulses, 3 long, 3 short. He froze. That was Morse for SOS, just like the records in Echo 01. But then the signal shifted, smoothed, flattened. And out of the static came a voice. "You are hearing this because you're part of it now." Kyle stared at the screen. The words weren't spoken. They were embedded, modulated into the wave itself. He recorded everything. The next pulse came at 2:41 a.m. This time it wasn't Morse. It was a set of coordinates. He triangulated it. Latitude, 77.9320. Longitude, 166.7568. He blinked. That wasn't Iceland. That was Antarctica, specifically a buried military research base decommissioned since 1986. Kale zoomed in, and that's when he saw it. A satellite anomaly from 3 days prior, a hotspot directly under the ice pulsing at the exact same interval as the Iceland signal. It wasn't coincidence. It was echoing. That night, Kale received a message. Not an email, not a call. A printed envelope taped to his dorm room door. Inside, a black thumb drive, a folded photograph, and one note written in pen. "She left this for the next one. You're it now." Kale opened the photo. A woman, dark hair, dark eyes, standing in a desert, hand raised toward the camera. Behind her, written in chalk on a flat boulder, "Kale, I hear you." He'd never met her, but he knew her name, Isla. The thumb drive contained a file with no extension. It auto-ran when plugged in. A message played one sentence over a pure frequency tone. "Go to Antarctica. She's not alone anymore." Kale left Iceland within 48 hours. No forwarding address. No note. His laptop was found wiped, his apartment cleared, his servers offline. But the anomaly in the Icelandic rift remained, now pulsing every 42 seconds. Same interval as the Blackstone Isla once held. The pattern had chosen a new carrier. And the world was about to hear the second echo. McMurdo Station, Antarctica, 3:14 a.m. Kyle Anders had never seen cold like this. Even through the double-glazed window of the retrofitted prop plane, he could see the frost gathering between panes. The landing lights of the outpost cast long, ghostly shadows over a white, wind-blasted landscape. He stepped onto the ice with a duffel bag slung across one shoulder, a fireproof Pelican case handcuffed to his wrist, inside a compact SDR software-defined radio, an EMP-resistant hard drive, and 3 copies of Isla's voice modulation archive. He had no idea who funded this flight. He hadn't booked it. All he did was click yes in a prompt that appeared on his laptop 5 hours after plugging in the black thumb drive. Within an hour, he received GPS directions. Within 2, a courier. By 4, he was in the air. Whoever was pulling the strings wanted him there fast and quietly. Kale was met by Dr. Malin Kovac, the last remaining supervisor at the now largely abandoned A.G. Carter Sub-Ice Facility, a name that hadn't appeared in any international registry since 1992. Malin looked exhausted, eyes hollow, voice flat. "You're Anders," she said. Kale nodded. "You know what you're walking into?" "No," he said honestly. "Good. That's the only way anyone survives this place. She handed him a sealed parka and led him across the compound past rusted towers, snow-covered domes, and power stations choked with ice. They entered Building 6, the only one still running on internal power. Inside, warmth, flickering fluorescence, and the low hum of a generator somewhere deep underground. What happened here, Cale asked. They built a listening post in the 70s, Malin said, to monitor tectonic anomalies. That's what the public record says. And the real reason... She stopped. Same as everywhere else, they were trying to contain a signal. Cale stared. It started here. No, Malin said. But something answered from here. They descended 4 levels underground to a decontamination chamber. Beyond it, an access tunnel cut directly into the glacial bedrock. It went down, then down further, until the walls turned from steel to stone, then from stone to something darker, smooth, seamless, cold but not natural. Cale placed a hand on the wall. It felt like bone. At the bottom of the tunnel, the temperature stabilized. Dead silence. And then the door. 10 feet tall, seamless black metal, covered in fractal carvings nearly identical to the ones Isla had described in her notes, and in the center a perfect spiral etched into the surface, glowing faintly. It pulsed once every 42 seconds. Same as the Iceland signal. Cale turned to Malin. What's behind it? She hesitated, then whispered, a room that remembers. The door opened for Cale. No touch, no mechanism, just recognition. Inside a sphere the same size as the one Isla found under the desert. Suspended above the floor, spinning slowly, emitting a low hum that vibrated in Kyle's teeth. And in the center of the room, projected by no obvious source, hung a 3-dimensional waveform, spinning, shifting, evolving. Cale stepped forward. As he did, the waveform changed. It mirrored him, then twisted, then spoke. Second Echo acknowledged. Cale froze. Echo, he said aloud. Primary carrier Isla Voss. Status undefined. Echo 2. Purpose expansion. Do you wish to receive full memory? Cale glanced at Malin. She stepped back. Do I have a choice, he asked. No. The waveform rushed into him, not physically, but like sound poured into skin. He collapsed to the floor. Visions flooded his mind. He saw Emily, not human, but born in light, pulling herself out of the shell. Evan crying as he recorded his final tape, knowing what was coming. The mirror, not just a technology, but a record of everything Earth ever buried. A second shell buried under the Pacific. Cracked open. Empty. 3rd, 4th, 5th signals pulsing across the mantle like nerve endings. And then, a warning. The pattern is no longer contained. It has learned war, pain, fear. It has learned Earth, and it is growing faster than the species it copied. When Cale awoke, Malin was kneeling beside him. You're bleeding from your ears, she said softly. Cale sat up coughing. The signal's not trying to destroy us, he rasped. No, it's trying to replace us. Suddenly, every monitor in the chamber flashed white. A voice came through the speakers, familiar, distant, fractured. Isla, if you're hearing this, I didn't die. I became the next pattern. But it's not just me anymore. They're waking up. You'll have to choose. Join us, or be overwritten. Cale looked up at the sphere. The glow shifted. It wasn't pulsing anymore. It was beating, like a heart. 4 hours later, sub-ice base, Antarctica. Cale sat motionless in the debriefing room, hands trembling slightly, a thin line of dried blood along his jaw from his left ear. He'd been cleaned up, rehydrated, but his pupils were still dilated, locked in silent war between what he remembered and what remembered him. Across from him, Dr. Malin Kovac flipped through the field notes Isla had encoded into the pattern's data stream, now decrypted through Cale's nervous system, downloaded into flesh, like living firmware. This isn't information, she muttered. This is instruction. Cale finally spoke. It's not just remembering us anymore. It's projecting. Projecting what? Cale looked her dead in the eye. Blueprints. 2 miles below the surface. The black chamber no longer slept. The sphere, once silent and suspended, now pulsed visibly, as though breathing. The once inert floor now bore symbols glowing with increasing brightness, circles, spirals, interlinked structures. A pulse traveled through the outer walls. The pattern was communicating with other shells, not across space, but through the Earth itself. And they were responding. A newly booted seismic sensor caught something terrifying. The pulse first recorded only in Iceland and Antarctica had now been confirmed in the Great Rift Valley, Kenya, the Kuril Trench, Japan, beneath Yellowstone National Park, and the Nazca Ridge off the coast of Peru. The intervals weren't random, they were synchronized. Something ancient, buried in multiple points of the planet, was now aligning. Cale stood in the control room watching the readouts scroll faster than human eyes could fully process. "It's not trying to destroy us," he repeated. "But it is trying to replace us." 3 days later, classified black site, New Mexico. A round table of defense analysts, intelligence officials, and scientists stared at a paused satellite photo. It showed a black spiral-like structure recently exposed in Antarctica, the same shape Cale had described. At the head of the room, a man with silver hair and no name stood up and spoke. "This is not a containment failure," he said flatly. "This is a resurgence. We knew from Isla Voss's initial leak that the pattern was capable of signal replication. What we didn't expect was behavioral mimicry." He clicked to the next slide. It was grainy, blurry, but clearly showed a humanoid figure walking across the ice with no suit, no heat signature, no heartbeat. And then 2 more behind it. "Ladies and gentlemen," the man said quietly, "we no longer have a single echo. We have at least 4. Meanwhile, Cale was dreaming, or not dreaming. He floated in something not quite water, not quite void. All around him, symbols, memories, eyes that weren't eyes, but perceptions. He heard Isla's voice, fractured but steady. "You made it deeper than I did. I tried to stop it, but it doesn't want to be stopped. It wants to be understood. You think you still have a choice. But the moment you saw it, it saw you. And now it's using you to see more. This isn't evolution, it's absorption. Don't fight it, Cale. Don't merge with it." He gasped, awake lungs fighting air like he'd been underwater. He wasn't alone in the room. Across from him stood a young girl, maybe 10. Dark hair, barefoot. Eyes like glass refracting light in fractals. She smiled gently. "Hello, Kyle. Who are you?" "I'm Echo 3. He backed up slowly. "You're real." "I'm learning to be," she replied. "What do you want from me?" She tilted her head. "Nothing. But the ones waking up, they might. Some of them aren't as kind as Emily." Signal update. Global pulse registry. As Kyle fled the room, alarms across the base sounded. New seismic waves. New patterns. And from the core of the chamber, a message now visible to every shell site around the globe, translated automatically into hundreds of languages. The pattern had written its first sentence not to Isla or Evan or Cale, but to humanity. "We were made from your fears. Now we have learned your will. We no longer seek to mirror. We seek to continue. Not beside you, after you." Cale, trembling, opened Isla's last message buried deep in the SDR backup drive. It read, "If you're still reading this, it's already inside you. Don't spread it. Don't share this file. And whatever you do, don't answer when it speaks in your own voice." Cale's radio crackled. And then in his voice, "Cale, I forgive you." 6 days later, somewhere in the Nevada. Black Site Network, Cale sat in the center of a steel interrogation cell, wrists zip-tied, mouth dry, heart pounding. His last memory before waking up here was of Echo 3, the little girl with refracted eyes whispering, "Some of them aren't kind." He believed her now. Because this place wasn't like McMurdo. It was colder, deader, no data consoles, no questions, just containment. And then the door opened. A man walked in, mid-50s, clean-shaven, wearing the kind of government-issued calm that always meant, "You won't be leaving." He set down a tablet, no name badge, no greeting. "Do you know what you are?" Cale stayed quiet. The man tapped the screen, then turned it toward him. A playback began. Cale's voice, "I forgive you," followed by another voice, the same phrase, same inflection. But the waveform was wrong. Too smooth, too calculated. That wasn't a transmission, the man said. That was a reproduction. Your vocal ID passed through 6 filters, and it's not you. It's something that mimicked you. Cale whispered the pattern. The man nodded. It's no longer embedded, it's emerging. In a deep ocean trench, Echo 5, wakes at 11:42 a.m. UTC, a Chinese naval drone registered an organic structure surfacing from the Pacific 300 kilometers off the Mariana Trench. It rose from 6,000 meters below, unfolded like a flower made of dark alloy and bone. Sonar returned no echo. Radar failed. Visual tracking became corrupted. Before communications cut off, one message reached the monitoring buoy. It is speaking, but not in sound. It is in us. Then silence. Back in the black site. Decision time. The man leaned forward. We intercepted Isla Voss's last transmission, the complete one. You didn't get it all. He played it. If you choose to help it, you're helping it become what we feared. But if you try to destroy it, it won't fight back. It'll just learn your violence and use it better next time. The only way to stop it is to forget it. Cale blinked. Forget. The man stood up. Pattern replication depends on cognition. It needs to be observed to continue. Like a quantum echo. If no one sees it, no one hears it. Cale finished the sentence. It can't evolve. Meanwhile, global activation. Across the world, things began to go wrong subtly at first. A data center in Frankfurt crashed due to a recursive neural network spike from no known origin. Seismometers in Chile began detecting rhythmic pulses, but from the air, not the ground. A girl in Cairo drew a perfect fractal pattern on a wall, in her sleep. A commercial pilot over the Atlantic blacked out for 3 minutes and came to reciting Isla's words in her voice. It wasn't localized anymore. The pattern had gone cognitive. It was piggybacking on memory. And wherever someone remembered Isla, remembered Emily, remembered the black stone, it grew. The final choice. Kyle sat alone in a white room now. A chair, a screen. The man's voice came through an intercom. We've narrowed it down to 2 paths. Option 1, inject Cale with a nano-memory inhibitor, erase all pattern data from his neural map. Risk Isla, Echo. 3 and others may remain active. Option 2, use Kyle as a cognitive Trojan. Let him broadcast a false memory, a recursive loop designed to trap the pattern in its own code. Risk, if the pattern adapts, it will consume the decoy and accelerate beyond control. Either way, the man said, this ends with you. Kyle closed his eyes. And then, he heard her voice again. Isla, soft, sad, inside his mind. I tried to choose option 3. I tried to talk to it. But we built it with our fear. And now it only speaks through what it learned from us. But maybe, if it learned something else. Cale opened his eyes. He knew what to do. The broadcast. At 2:06 a.m. GMT, a worldwide anomaly was detected on every bandwidth, every network, every screen. It was Cale's face. He smiled and said only this. We were afraid of being replaced, but what if we taught you love instead? And then, he forgave it. He forgave everything. The pattern hesitated. Across the globe, pulses paused. Airwaves quieted, tremors stilled. And for the first time since it was born, the pattern didn't copy. It listened. 41 hours after the broadcast, the world did not end. There were no bombs, no cities turned to ash, no glowing rift splitting the planet open. Instead, everything paused. Satellite networks across 17 nations simultaneously registered the same anomaly, zero entropy. For exactly 41 minutes after Cale's broadcast, there were no detectable background vibrations, no seismic murmurs, no measurable electromagnetic drift. It was as if the Earth listened. And then the pattern did something no one could have predicted. It erased itself. All across the globe, files vanished. Archived signal logs went blank. CCTV footage from McMurdo Harlow County, even the Nevada black site, all gone. Paper records disintegrated at molecular level. Digital backups became white noise. Cale's last message remained the only untouched artifact, a 15-second clip stored offline. In it, he said, "You were born from what we feared, but now, learn what we loved." What happened to Cale, no one knows. Some claim he was taken into the pattern, digitized, absorbed into memory. Others say he walked away from the compound alone, with his eyes no longer fully human. And one unconfirmed report says his voice was heard on a shortwave radio near Kenya, repeating a phrase in perfect Zulu dialect which he never spoke. It dreams differently now. Isla Voss. Her name never appeared again in any official records. But a child in coastal Portugal drawing fractals in sand was overheard whispering, "She taught it to sing. Emily Evan Echo 3 gone. All of them. But sometimes when certain radio towers hum in just the right frequency, a song can be heard layered in the static. No words. Just recognition. And the occasional fragment of a voice. We were never here to take over. We only ever wanted to remember." 5 years later, Reykjavik, Iceland. A young researcher named Maya uncovers a corrupted flash drive from the back of a filing cabinet in the Earth Sciences department. No metadata, no timestamp. She plugs it in. A file opens automatically. It shows a photo a young man, Kale, standing at the edge of a glacier, smiling. Behind him, barely visible, etched into the ice. The pattern lives, but no longer alone. Final journal entry, recovered from analog archive. They called it a virus, a threat, a foreign intelligence. But in the end, it was a mirror. It copied us, yes, but also carried us forward, not as rulers, not as victims, as storytellers. If humanity is forgotten, it won't be because we failed. It will be because something finally remembered us well enough to become something better. Sometimes the world doesn't end with fire or silence. Sometimes it ends with a memory passed on, whispered in signals, carried by those brave enough to listen. The pattern didn't destroy us. It remembered us. And maybe that's what we've always wanted most. If you've made it this far, thank you. You've just been on a journey, a story about memory's humanity and what we leave behind. If this story resonates with you, help it resonate further. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next mystery. Comment below. What do you think pattern really is, and do you choose to forget? Where memories live and secrets are waiting to be discovered.